In a world where rising seas have swallowed much of the land, this story takes us on a heartwarming adventure. Meet Natsuki, a young boy returning to his small island town after losing his loved ones. There, he discovers ATRI, a quirky humanoid robot created by someone who is close to Natsuki. With ATRI's bubbly personality and childlike curiosity, they forge a unique bond that exceeds humans and machines. Let's dive deep in the exploration of friendship, emotions, and beautiful moments between Natsuki and ATRI that proves love knows no boundaries, even between a boy and a robot. Natsuki wakes from a nightmare about the building collapse that cost him his leg. Catherine is with him, claiming she brought something to make him rich. Natsuki accuses her of trying to seduce him and tells her to stay away. After attaching his prosthetic leg, Catherine insists the device is real, but Natsuki reminds her she's been fooled before. He warns her about getting killed due to carelessness, but she challenges him and hands him the device. Natsuki takes it, muttering he no longer cares. On deck, Catherine listens to news about the Project Amaterasu launch and asks if it will succeed. Natsuki says it will. Catherine complains about their living conditions, and Natsuki says everything will eventually collapse. She asks if the ship will survive underwater, and he sarcastically reminds her it was her idea, teasing her about her age, which angers her. Minamo asks Natsuki to go to school, but he ignores her. Catherine teases Minamo about liking Natsuki, which she denies. Natsuki calls her a scammer, but Catherine defends her, saying the treasure in her grandmother's house is real. Confused, Minamo asks who her grandmother is. Natsuki reveals Catherine is Professor Nonko Yachigusa, and they plan to retrieve treasure from her submerged house. Catherine worries but says they need the money. Minamo questions her trustworthiness, but Natsuki invites her to help, explaining the rising seas submerged cities long ago. Natsuki finds the sunken city in the submarine and a stasis capsule with a lifelike girl. As he lifts her, she wakes up, startling him and causing a crash. Haunted by memories, Natsuki orders Minamo to surface. Natsuki dives in to save the girl, losing his prosthetic leg. She kisses him underwater. Back on the surface, the girl, ATRI, confirms she's an android. She reveals her mistress was Nonko, Natsuki's grandmother, and calmly accepts her passing. ATRI looks forward to working with Natsuki. Minamo leaves for school, reminding them not to sell ATRI. Catherine asks what's next. Natsuki admits he can't care for ATRI and needs to fix his prosthetic leg. They head out, with ATRI following slowly, commenting that everything feels new but her memories are missing. Seeing she's barefoot, Natsuki buys her shoes and she thanks him. Natsuki collapses due to his old leg, but ATRI helps him up. They meet a buyer who reveals ATRI is a valuable 4th-generation android and offers a high price. ATRI recalls that her mistress gave her an important order but forgot it. ATRI angrily reminds him calling robots scrap violates the law. Catherine takes ATRI to find a better deal. ATRI's shoe falls off as they leave, and Natsuki tries to catch up, but fails. Later, ATRI returns and tells Natsuki she'll be his left. Natsuki is surprised when ATRI, a robot, offers to be his leg, emphasizing that robots should serve their masters. During an attempted jump, they both fall into the sea. The following day, ATRI is puzzled about her failure and wants to try again, but Natsuki shifts the conversation to Catherine, who had fled from debt collectors, and told ATRI to hide. Realizing Catherine's fixation on money, Natsuki allows ATRI to prepare breakfast, but her clumsiness leads to a fire, prompting Minamo to rush in and help extinguish it. ATRI claims her error demonstrates her advanced capabilities, while Natsuki argues that malfunctioning robots are dangerous. ATRI defends herself, asserting that calling her junk violates the anti-robot discrimination law, but Natsuki clarifies he only refers to her. Minamo supports ATRI, highlighting her significance to Natsuki's grandmother, and they agree to search for records about ATRI's past. After retrieving items from a submarine, ATRI fails to recognize anything. However, Natsuki discovers a book about rising sea levels that concerns his grandmother. ATRI recalls her mission to stop this phenomenon, but cannot control the ocean when approaching it. Natsuki inquires about his grandmother, but ATRI has no memories. Minamo suggests they go to school together to help ATRI remember. ATRI feels familiarity with the idea of school, but then declares it's lunchtime, prompting Natsuki to declare he'll sell her. ATRI insists she can be of help, but Natsuki is dismissive. Later, ATRI expresses concern for Natsuki's solitude while walking, but Minamo explains that humans sometimes need space. At Minamo's house, she reveals that Natsuki was excluded from a rocket mission due to his prosthetic leg. ATRI offers to help him achieve his dream of space travel. ATRI stays with an unwell Natsuki that night, who inadvertently calls her by name. The following day, he asks her to forget the previous night. ATRI struggles with her morning routine, seeking Natsuki's help, and he decides not to sell her since Catherine is gone, requesting she keep the previous night a secret. Minamo enters and calms Natsuki, who plans to sell ATRI. She proposes they all attend school together, but Natsuki refuses. While searching for food and water, he explains the town's deteriorating infrastructure. ATRI finds a can of chips, but is told to leave it for the children. They climb to a higher spot, where Natsuki reminisces about the beauty of their town and his grandmother's efforts to protect it. However, they soon realize they've taken a wrong turn, with ATRI admitting she has no memories of the area. She wonders if they have found the school. The next day, Natsuki, Minamo, and ATRI arrive at the school. He gives ATRI a notebook to help with her memory, but she becomes upset when he looks at it, claiming it violates robot privacy laws. As they approach the building, 3 girls block their path, accusing Natsuki of being a mercenary killer. ATRI protectively stands in front of him, but the girls insult her. Natsuki jokingly threatens them with his cane, causing the girls to flee in a boat. ATRI tries to chase them, but is stopped by Natsuki, who suggests they can follow in another ship. Upon reaching the school, the girls are gone, and they find Minamo teaching. The girls accuse Natsuki and ATRI of chasing them. Natsuki sarcastically calls ATRI third antique junk, infuriating her. Minamo explains that the other teachers had left, and her parents had asked her to close the school. Natsuki suggests sending the children to the mainland for a better life. Still, Ryuji criticizes him for not understanding their struggles, claiming he's part of the elite who abandoned the town. As they leave in a boat, ATRI expresses that she enjoyed school, while Natsuki feels out of place. Minamo reveals that Ryuji's anger stems from his experiences with children he couldn't save. Suddenly, Natsuki realizes ATRI is missing. Minamo tells him she went home early to prepare dinner. When they return, they find the submarine exploded, and ATRI greets them cheerfully, with a pot stuck on her head. ATRI claims her blunder demonstrates her high performance, humorously explaining that she was a combat robot left without purpose after the war, adopted by Nanko. When questioned about lying, ATRI admits her story was false. Later, during dinner, Natsuki tells Minamo about ATRI's deception. ATRI defends herself, saying she struggles with chores and questions her identity. Annoyed, Natsuki orders her to keep cleaning. After Minamo leaves, ATRI insists on tasting the food. Remembering her notebook, they return to school and find Ririka studying in the dark. Ryuji arrives, sharing the harsh realities of life. Natsuki suggests testing a windmill which generates some power, but is insufficient. The next day, Natsuki brings supplies to school and demonstrates how to store wind-generated electricity. While Ryuji doubts their efforts, Natsuki points to the sea, suggesting they harness energy from the flooding seawater at high tide. Natsuki and his friends embark on a boat ride to discuss their tidal energy mission. He explained that any rotating turbine can generate power, but Ryuji needed to express doubt about its resources. The atmosphere shifts when Minamo arrives in a swimsuit, prompting Natsuki to remind her that diving requires professional supervision. Upon reaching their dive site, Natsuki boards a submarine while ATRI dives. She discovers a crab, but Natsuki remains focused on locating Ryuji's family factory, which he identifies as Nojima Precision Machinery Company. ATRI also searches for glue drums, showcasing her expressive personality. When she returns with the crabs, Natsuki questions her cheerful demeanor, to which ATRI replies that the crab tastes delicious. Minamo finds a mold for making amagaki, and Natsuki asks her to gather the necessary ingredients. Ryuji queries about the glue, and Natsuki reassures him they found useful tools at the factory. On their way back, Minamo suggests a barbecue party. Once on the island, everyone enjoys the food, and ATRI asserts that her ability to taste proves her performance as a robot. Minamo proposes a school festival which excites ATRI. Suddenly, Ririka bursts in, announcing a heated argument between Natsuki and Ryuji over how to make a machine part lighter yet stronger. ATRI humorously intervenes, threatening them with her missile to stop the argument. The girls calmed the situation with sweets, and Minamo inquired about the disagreement. Natsuki admits they got carried away, while Ryuji feels the need to reconsider his calculations. Natsuki apologizes, acknowledging Ryuji's valuable factory experience, leading to their reconciliation. Minamo comments on Ryuji's newfound usefulness. That night, Natsuki talks to Minamo, apologizing for asking her to bring something challenging. They discuss ATRI's human-like emotions, leaving Natsuki uncertain how to treat her. They find ATRI in pajamas, seeking compliments which Minamo happily provides. Suddenly, Catherine threatens Minamo with a knife, demanding money and breaking their agreement. ATRI, shocked, thinks Natsuki sold her for money. Minamo urges ATRI to flee, but Catherine threatens her if she does. Natsuki realizes ATRI can't fight humans and signals her to intervene. ATRI uses her rocket fist to punch Catherine, knocking her down. Catherine escapes, leaving her wallet behind and revealing her name as Hanako Osada and her past at their school. Meanwhile, Natsuki and Ryuji checked their project, but needed help finding batteries to store the electricity generated. In a market, a merchant offers a small, expensive battery, recognizing ATRI's rarity and proposing to trade all batteries for her. Natsuki reflects on ATRI's value and connection to his grandmother, deciding against selling her. ATRI suggests using her battery, but Natsuki declines, affirming his commitment. Natsuki struggles to breathe underwater and is reaching out for help. ATRI arrives, promising to fulfill his wishes, but he urges her not to. He wakes startled from the nightmare and falls out of bed, waking ATRI. Later, Natsuki reflects outside when Hanako, formerly Catherine, emerges from the ocean. He helps her inside, and she insists nothing is wrong. But ATRI notes she smells like alcohol. Hanako rants about life, claiming there are only two ways to live, with alcohol or without it. Natsuki finds this ridiculous and tells ATRI to deal with Hanako. Hanako collapses on the couch, lamenting that no one cares for her. Natsuki insists he won't sell ATRI. Hanako argues that without money, the people after her will kill her, prompting Natsuki to reveal he knows her past as a teacher. Their argument is interrupted by a gunshot that shatters a window, and ATRI protects Natsuki. Hanako isn't sure when he asks if the attackers are debt collectors. Realizing they're in danger, Hanako decides to be bait so Natsuki and ATRI can escape. Natsuki asks ATRI to help fend off the attackers, explaining she can't stay by his side. ATRI agrees and leads one of the crooks away, while Hanako defeats another and hops on her motorcycle. ATRI runs to an undisclosed location, where Hanako catches up and invites her to join. As they drive, Hanako reveals that the men are after her, but ATRI insists on helping Natsuki take them down. Natsuki surprises the attackers with his submarine, and the trio returns to his home, where ATRI leaps off the motorcycle to tackle one of the crooks, triggering a memory of an injured woman. Natsuki discovers that the junk shop owner colludes with the collectors and threatens to expose him. After Hanako negotiates, he gives her money to pay off her debts, while Natsuki gathers supplies for their project. Before leaving, Hanako offers Natsuki cash, but he refuses. She mentions nothing left for her, prompting Natsuki to encourage her to visit the half-submerged school. Ririka and her friends confront Hanako at the school, and Minamo urges her to return as a teacher. Moved, and Hanako cries, indicating her acceptance. Natsuki then shares the materials he collected for their tidal power generator. Later, during dinner, ATRI expresses her wish to stay with Natsuki, who agrees. He contemplates ATRI's emotional capacity. After dinner, Natsuki helps her prepare for bed. The following day, they finished the project, and that night, Natsuki tested the device, successfully lighting up the classroom. Everyone celebrates and Natsuki reflects on their achievement. He thanks ATRI, who feels happy despite not being able to cry. Natsuki teaches her to smile and she beautifully responds. Natsuki teaches a class when a student struggles with a formula. As he helps her, ATRI enters, insisting she should be by his side. He reassures and sends her back to class, followed by Hanako, who drags ATRI back. Minamo and Ryuji discuss Natsuki's new teaching role. Ryuji jokes about students enrolling for the hot new teacher Yoko, who only attends for the electricity, introduces herself to Minamo. She praises Minamo's efforts, leading to a playful argument between Yoko and Ryuji about their contributions to restoring power. Natsuki and ATRI talk during a salvage mission, during which they find a communication wire. Minamo is excited about starting a salvage business, and Ryuji teases her about her feelings for Natsuki, urging her to confess before more female students arrive. ATRI discovers a gold watch and a crab underwater. Natsuki, initially annoyed, calms down and smiles, confusing her. They trade the watch for watermelons. ATRI notices Natsuki smiling more, and Ryuji jokes about his excitement over the influx of female students. Ryuji suggests delivering watermelons to Ririka, but ATRI refuses. Natsuki insists she goes with Ryuji, leaving him alone with Minamo, who thinks Natsuki's mood is due to ATRI. At home, ATRI writes in her log and refuses to let Natsuki see it, leading to an argument. Yoko and Ryuji meet Hanako on the rooftop to discuss Natsuki. Hanako gives advice and whispers a plan to Yoko for Sunday. That Sunday, Natsuki's salvage shop has unhappy customers. Yoko confesses her love for Natsuki while he works on his boat, but he brushes her off. She presses him about ATRI, prompting Hanako to intervene and tell him to be honest. Later, Yoko, Ryuji, and Minamo meet at school, where Yoko reveals Natsuki has a crush on an older woman. A flashback shows young Natsuki approaching a cliff, and Yoko explains the woman saved his life. ATRI arrives, and they question her about Natsuki. They hear Natsuki playing a song on the piano, and find him with Ririka and Hanako. When ATRI shows up, Natsuki tells her to study. Minamo then asks if ATRI could be Natsuki's first love, which makes him laugh and assure them she isn't. Later, Natsuki and ATRI return home and say goodbye to Ryuji and Minamo. ATRI's strange behavior concerns Natsuki when she doesn't say goodbye and runs away. She jumps onto the boat and sings a song that triggers a memory for Natsuki, the song his first love sang. ATRI tells him, "It's been a while." Natsuki quietly observes Atri as she sleeps, contemplating whether she might be the girl from his past. When he attempts to wake her, Atri insists it's still dark and suggests they talk later. She soothes him by stroking his head. This comforting gesture stirs memories of his past love, leaving Natsuki conflicted about his feelings. At school, Natsuki confides in Ryuji, who encourages him to accept that Atri could be his first love. However, Natsuki struggles to believe it. Minamo and Yoko arrive, prompting Natsuki to leave, but Atri scolds him for not waking her earlier. Their argument escalates, and in frustration, Natsuki calls Atri scrap. Yoko points out that Atri's words echo those of Natsuki's past love. Minamo speculates that Atri may remember Natsuki's grandmother's orders, suggesting Atri's presence in the capsule holds significance. Natsuki agrees to investigate Nanko's orders to determine if Atri is his first love. She recalls a memory of singing to a boy on a cliff to prevent him from jumping. Yoko argues this memory confirms Atri is Natsuki's first love, but Natsuki remains silent, lost in thought. As he writes down connections between Atri and his past love, he accepts that Atri may be that girl. When Hanako questions him, he hides his notes, but she suspects he's writing about Atri. Hanako acknowledges Atri's potential emotions, but warns Natsuki about the risks of misunderstanding humanoids. At a water fountain, Natsuki teases Atri about her cooking skills and questions her feelings about his confession. Atri states she likes him, leaving Natsuki uncertain about her sincerity. Natsuki and Hanako observe Atri and Ririka, and Hanako encourages Natsuki to help Atri learn about human romance. Hanako gathers the boys on the rooftop to discuss the differences between liking and loving, leaving Atri and the girls behind. Later, Atri and Ririka discover a book on romance in the library, featuring a romantic image. At home, Atri cooks Hamburg steak for Natsuki, who compliments her efforts. Atri proposes they go out the next day, leading to a casual outing. During their day together, Natsuki buys Atri new shoes and reassures her about her cooking mishap. Atri expresses her belief in having a heart and wanting to make Natsuki happy despite her uncertainty about being human. Their playful splashing in the ocean ends with an accidental kiss, solidifying their budding feelings. Natsuki watches Atri sleep, confused about their kiss in the ocean. He tries to calm himself, reminding himself she's just a piece of scrap. He wakes her, realizing she can dream, but lets her go when she calls him a pervert. At school, Minamo and Yoko notice Natsuki acting strange by the window. During swimming practice, a girl tells Hanako Atri hasn't resurfaced yet. Atri soon emerges with a crab. Natsuki sits by the window as Yoko questions him about Atri, noting his red ears. Ryuji asks if Natsuki sees Atri as his first crush, while Yoko asks about their relationship. Blushing, Natsuki tries to brush them off, but eventually admits he kissed Atri. On the rooftop, they discuss the situation. Natsuki asks them not to misunderstand, but Ryuji encourages the relationship. Yoko jokes about Natsuki loving an underage girl, which annoys him. Yoko urges him to clarify his feelings for Atri, and Natsuki admits he's unsure. Atri arrives and scolds him for skipping class, leading to an argument. Afterward, Atri, Minamo, and Natsuki head out, but Atri leaves to prepare dinner for Natsuki. Minamo encourages Natsuki to confront Atri about his feelings. When Minamo runs into Yoko and Ryuji, they ask if she's okay with Natsuki being with Atri. She says she is, but her expression reveals otherwise. Later, Atri brings Natsuki the food she prepared and he enjoys it, making her happy. When he asks about her emotions, Atri admits she likes him. However, when she leans in to kiss him, Natsuki pushes her away and steps outside. Atri humorously follows, wrapped in a towel, and they share a playful moment before returning inside. They end up in an intimate position on the bed, but Natsuki sets boundaries, placing a curtain between them and saying they should interact normally until Atri understands love. As they discuss humanity, Atri reveals she was taught to say certain things, but before she can explain, Natsuki falls asleep. He dreams of being trapped under rubble, comforted by Atri. Natsuki wakes to find Atri asleep in a chair. He reads her memory log, discovering she wrote about their kiss and her confusion. He realizes she has been mimicking what she thought he wanted to hear, including that she has a heart. When Atri wakes up, Natsuki firmly tells her to stay away from him. Natsuki accuses Atri of deceiving him, claiming she only pretended to have a heart. When she tries to lighten the mood, a deeply hurt Natsuki tells her to shut up, realizing her behavior is mechanical. He asks if she loves him, and she replies that she dislikes him in his current state. Anguished, Natsuki storms into the rain, reflecting on their time together and feeling like it was all a lie. Overwhelmed, he collapses and cries. His friends, Ryuji, Ririka, and Minamo, find him and bring him to Minamo's home, where she offers to take care of him. Minamo tries to console Natsuki, suggesting that while Atri may indeed have a heart, she struggles to express it. She explains that, like Atri, humans also choose their actions based on circumstances, even when they know right from wrong. Natsuki listens quietly and eventually falls asleep. Minamo informs him that ATRI has returned to school the following day, prompting him to confront her. However, when they arrive, ATRI is missing. Hanako hands Natsuki an envelope containing information about the Yamasaki factory's fourth-generation models, including one that went rogue and harmed children. Although Hanako reassures him that ATRI may not be the rogue model, she admits that one of the 58 units was never accounted for. As Natsuki processes this revelation, Yasuda, a former developer from the factory, approaches him and shares an old log, written by a humanoid, explaining that units like ATRI were taught to read and write to develop human-like memory. Natsuki learns that ATRI once had a master who instructed her to befriend a girl named Shina. Yasuda reveals more about ATRI's creator and the tragic events that led to his death, expressing his desire to recover and dispose of the last remaining unit, believed to be ATRI, to fulfill his mentor's wishes. He gives Natsuki a consent form for ATRI's recovery and disposal, understanding the inner conflict Natsuki faces. Natsuki returns home and asks ATRI to act like she used to. She complies, but he remains conflicted and accuses her again of pretending to have a heart. Later, he finds a note from ATRI saying she went to school with Ririka. Rushing there, Natsuki discovers that Yasuda has taken children hostage, demanding ATRI in exchange for their freedom. Ririka arrives with ATRI, and Yasuda releases the children. He then begins to abuse ATRI, blaming her for the professor's death. Despite struggling with his injured leg, Natsuki pushes himself to reach ATRI. As he arrives, she calls out to him. Natsuki confronts Yasuda and his ally in the rain, demanding they stop hurting ATRI. Yasuda drops ATRI and grabs Natsuki, electrocuting him with his robotic hand while blaming ATRI and other humanoids for his master's death. As Natsuki struggles, ATRI stands up and tells Yasuda to leave him alone. When Yasuda mocks her, she responds by punching him, causing him to bleed. Yasuda then declares her defective, using her aggression as proof and prepares to terminate her. However, ATRI breaks his robotic fingers and knocks him unconscious. She then grabs a gun from Yasuda's ally, hands it to Natsuki and asks him to dispose of her, claiming that she is defective. Natsuki refuses, discarding the gun and apologizing for his previous hurtful words. He admits he was wrong and reassures her that she does, indeed, have a heart. When ATRI denies having a heart, Natsuki comforts her, explaining that no one truly knows what a heart is, but encourages her to express her emotions. This triggers memories of Shiina from ATRI's journal, and she begins to cry, showing human emotions for the first time. Later, Natsuki, Minamo, Yoko, and ATRI gather at Natsuki's home. Natsuki reveals that Shiina was his mother. Minamo reads ATRI's journal and finds the words, "I love you," smudged by tears, which Natsuki takes as proof that ATRI has always had a heart. When ATRI wakes up, Natsuki reassures her that Ryuji and Hanako are working with the police to protect her from Yasuda. ATRI, however, feels guilt over her past and present actions. Natsuki comforts her by gently caressing her head, explaining that everyone says and does things they regret, but that is part of being human. He promises to stay by her side and help her navigate her emotions, and they share a heartfelt hug. ATRI then faints, but Natsuki assures Minamo and Yoko that she needs rest. The story flashes back 31 years, showing a scientist, likely Nonko, assigning ATRI as Shiina's caretaker. ATRI and Shiina form a bond, but Shiina becomes troubled during middle school due to bullying. When ATRI intervenes to save Shiina from attempting suicide, Shiina, devastated, calls ATRI a monster. In the present, Natsuki speculates that ATRI watched over Shiina's life until his birth. Eventually, ATRI's memories were erased, and Nonko put her into a dormant state. Natsuki later takes ATRI to the spot where she saved him as a child, thanking her and conveying Shiina's unspoken apology. Overwhelmed, ATRI cries, and Natsuki reassures her. Soon they arrive at the very place where ATRI had saved Natsuki's life years ago. In the morning, Natsuki helps ATRI prepare for school. When he hands her a toothbrush, ATRI makes a cute face, hinting she wants him to brush her teeth. Natsuki playfully refuses, insisting she can do it herself since she's a high-performance humanoid. ATRI reminds him they'll be late. At school, ATRI's friends notice her yawning. She jokes that Natsuki hasn't let her sleep much lately. When Natsuki arrives, he counters her claim, announcing his plan to travel to the mainland and attend the academy he once considered. Inspired by Ririka and his desire to learn about humanoids and improve human-humanoid relations, his speech earned applause from the students. Natsuki shares that ATRI has decided to accompany him. She appears lost in thought when he asks ATRI to confirm. Later, Natsuki discusses his decision with Yoko, Minamo, and Ryuji. Before parting, he asks Ryuji to run the salvage shop in his absence, even offering him the submarine and boat. Ryuji jokingly refuses, initially disappointing Natsuki, but eventually agrees, realizing the joy in recovering lost items. Meanwhile, ATRI continues to act strangely, snapping out of it when Natsuki calls her. Back home, she prepares a mediocre meal, prompting Natsuki to call her a piece of junk again teasingly. ATRI playfully punches him, and Natsuki acknowledges he shouldn't say that anymore, feeling relieved she didn't leave him. Natsuki checks on his submarine. He is soon joined by ATRI, who explains that the boat is trying to thank him. After expressing gratitude, ATRI urges him to return to the house to discuss something important. He finds a pillow on his bed with love written on it. ATRI admits Hanako suggested she get intimate with him before they move, creating an awkward atmosphere. Suddenly, ATRI leans in for a kiss, but Natsuki suggests they take their time. ATRI struggles and asks if Natsuki likes her. He hesitates, but ATRI places the pillow on him before responding, telling him not to answer. Later, Natsuki suggests a walk. While gazing at the moon, he tells ATRI she's special, but admits he's unsure about their relationship's progression. Suddenly, ATRI malfunctions, sending Natsuki into a panic. He rushes her home, frantically searching for documents about her model. Natsuki heads to school to inform Hanako and the others about ATRI's condition. To his surprise, ATRI arrives, repeatedly shutting off and turning back on. Alarmed, Natsuki watches as Hanako closes the school and seeks help. Using his submarine, Natsuki retrieves ATRI's charging capsule and places her inside. When she wakes, she recognizes him, and ATRI reveals she remembers Nonko's final order for her, leaving Natsuki in suspense. ATRI gathers her friends and reveals Nonko's final order. She must go to Eden. Her capsule is programmed to remind her of this mission when its battery dies. The group speculates about Nonko's hidden motives. ATRI reassures Natsuki that forgetting her orders isn't her fault, and that calling her a piece of scrap is unfair. When Minamo asks where Eden is, ATRI gestures toward the sea, but admits she doesn't know its exact location or what to do upon arrival. This realization leads to playful teasing about ATRI being a piece of scrap, prompting her to charge her rocket punch in mock frustration. They search for clues about Eden, but find nothing. Although they question its existence, ATRI insists it's in the direction she pointed. Hanako becomes frustrated, noting ATRI's order is incomplete. Natsuki suggests Nonko's secrecy reflects her cautious nature. A flashback shows Natsuki arguing with Nonko about his leg, preventing him from going on the rocket. Nonko urges him to stop complaining and find solutions. Natsuki reflects on Nonko's strength as the group sets off on a boat, waving goodbye to Hanako and the kids. Ririka shows anxiety, recalling she saw something about Eden. On the radio, a spokesperson discusses the Amaterasu project and the launch of a weather satellite to investigate rising water levels. During the journey, Ryuji reminds everyone to conserve fuel while Natsuki uses binoculars to check their progress. Ryuji asks ATRI how big Eden is, but she doesn't know. Yoko wonders if Eden might be underwater, and ATRI agrees. Ryuji points out that their boat lacks sonar. Frustrated, ATRI dives into the ocean for clues. After returning empty-handed, Ririka gives Natsuki a newspaper featuring Nonko's interview about Project Eden, prompting him to pull out a map. He suggests he might know Eden's location, but their search yields nothing. As night falls, Natsuki confides in ATRI, suspecting Nonko created the fog to hide Eden. They enter his submarine and discover a long cable in the ocean. Natsuki wakes up after battling a solid current, realizing he's likely at Eden, but ATRI is missing. He finds minor robot life forms and speculates that Nonko created Eden to sustain life. Eventually, he locates ATRI next to the robot birds and tells her they've arrived. A virtual Nonko appears, informing ATRI she must enter the capsule to manage Eden. Natsuki objects, insisting he can provide a better home. Nonko warns that the world will perish due to rising sea levels, and claims ATRI is a lost cause. She reveals she installed a program to erase ATRI's memories, stating she has only 3 days left. After Nonko disappears, Natsuki urges ATRI to follow him, but he is shocked when she refuses to go to Eden. ATRI tells Natsuki she will follow Nonko's orders, but he pleads with her not to enter the capsule at Eden. Although ATRI suspects Nonko might be lying, she fears losing her memories of Natsuki and argues that Nonko could be telling the truth. Before ATRI can enter, Natsuki stops her, reminding her they have 3 days left and asking for that time to devise an alternative plan. ATRI agrees and they leave Eden's main facility, where they see Ryuji, Ririka, and others looking for them. Natsuki tells Ryuji he plans to return home and conduct research. Later, Natsuki reads a robot engineering textbook, while ATRI explains to Yoko and Minamo that she can't reveal what Nonko said because Natsuki wants it to remain secret. Minamo and Yoko swipe ATRI's log, along with Ryuji, and confront Natsuki. They remind him to ask for help, and point out Hanako with a boat outside. They suggest he use it to travel to the mainland, where he might find a way to save ATRI. They also reveal they know about ATRI's 3-day issue, possibly from her log, and promise to help while Natsuki is away. ATRI asks Natsuki to accompany her to the school's rooftop to follow Nanko's orders. That night, they return to the school dressed for a special party. Minamo and the others surprise ATRI with a birthday celebration for creating the humanoid series she is based on. They enjoy party activities and light fireworks on the rooftop. As the fireworks go off, ATRI reflects on how farewell parties are usually sad, but she is having fun. Hanako and Ririka say goodbye, and ATRI asks Natsuki for time alone with Minamo. She asks Minamo to look after Natsuki when she's gone, but Minamo insists he isn't weak. Natsuki brushes ATRI's teeth, giving him a new prosthetic leg she and the others bought for his travels. Finally, they arrive at Eden's main facility. ATRI opens the capsule, listing everyone she knows, and expressing that there's no one she dislikes. Natsuki yells at her, not wanting her to leave forever, but ATRI reassures him she'll always be with him in his heart. After kissing him, she enters the capsule. Natsuki begins to cry as it lowers, and outside, he sees lights on a nearby island, where a virtual ATRI greets him. 70 years later, Ririka pilots the first rocket of the Amaterasu project, while ATRI awakens, surprised to see a young Natsuki. He explains they are in the data world, after uploading his consciousness.